Hey everyone, and welcome to another DM help. I guess DM helped video. I guess would be the best way to say that. So we today are going to go over how to make good NPCs, which is something that I know as a early DM I struggled with a lot. So to help me with that tonight is Braylin. She made a couple of her own NPCs for her backstory, and she understands exactly how hard that is. So I figured bringing her in would be a great way to help with that.
Yeah, it was a struggle. It was a struggle.
Just a little bit.
Just a little.
So, the basic idea for making an NPC is you're going to be building that someone that lives in the world you're playing, either as a DM who has the oversight or as a player who is, someone that is integral to your backstory. You have a chance to really get in and feel that character out pretty well. And really, especially as a player, that's someone that you're really shaped the history of you. And as a DM, you'll find that most of the NPCs that you build, the ones you think are going to show up for about 8 minutes, end up lasting entire campaigns, and that one you spent 4 days on lasted all of 7 seconds. So we have the I like to break it down into your basic NPC types, and for me, you have that starting one, that backstory, that loved one NPC, or the rival, the backstory NPC that comes from the character, something integral to that character story. And I like to let my players build that one, and working with them. The next type is that nobody NPC, the one that shows up when your players are in Pudmit and they ask, "Hey, let's ask a random dude if you've seen Atriel." You don't have to. That's the easiest one. Takes about 7 seconds. Then you come into your story NPCs, your utility NPCs, which are like your vendor or combat assist NPCs, or even hirelings. Then you have your animal or monster NPCs, and then you come in to top it off with that villain NPC. That's the one where I tend to put most of my time, because they kill them too fast. But starting off, I want to start off with that backstory NPC, that loved one, that rival, family member, whatever they are. And we're going to let Braylin start with that one.
So, as a tiny little bit of backstory, I went through, I don't even know how many ideas I had. I knew I wanted to play Alejandra. I knew who she was going to be. I knew how I wanted to play her. However, building her family was borderline impossible for me. And I think that a lot of people struggle because they don't think about how it's going to interact with the world. And what I mean by that is you build your NPC to interact with you. As an example, I built my mom to coddle Alejandra. That's who she is. It's why she's pretty much naive in every aspect of the world. And when it comes to interacting with the world, that's something completely different, right? So when it comes to building an NPC, you have to be very aware that they are not going to interact with other people the way they interact with you. So when you're building your rival, they could absolutely hate you. You guys went to Bardic College together and they wanted to be the successful one and they wanted to sabotage you. But are they acting that way with every single person in their class? Or is it just you because you were the next best runner-up, right? Like, in situations like that, typically, no, they're only reacting to one person like that. Most people aren't completely hateful to every single person, right?
Most.
So that's something most people, that's something you have to factor in for quite a bit, is how they're going to react with the world. And I think that's what I struggled a lot with Alejandra, was the fact that I had this beautiful idea of what I wanted her to be, but building her family to interact with the world and build her up to be who she is was something that took a little bit more effort. So when you're building a rival, a family member, even a pet, like that goes with your NPC that you already, or with your playable character that you already have dreamed up, you have to really consider how they're interacting with the outside world. Like your dog, if you're building a dog to go with your person everywhere as a protector, you need to understand that you need to figure out how they became trained to be a protector, why they want to protect you, like how that all came about, because it's not like it was dropped in your lap and decided that it was going to hurt everybody that caused you harm. How do they depict who's going to cause you harm, right? That doesn't just go for dogs, right? Like if, as an example, Alejandra, if she was an NPC and she was just playing, or like she was just hanging out with the party and the party decided to adopt her because she stuck her bag or her hand in a bag that she shouldn't have and they felt bad for her. Why is she that naive, right? So you build your character backstory, but you also have to think about the backstory for your NPCs. Do you have to exactly write it down? No, but like, do you have to know why they are the way they are to make your character the way they are? Extremely. That's like the easiest way to explain it, at least in my opinion, because you're not just building your character, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of struggle, is now you have to build an entire socialization group around your character, and they all have to have backgrounds, because as much as you want your character to be the star of the show, there is a world that goes around on regardless if they're there or not, right? And
Yeah.
that has to be depicted in order for a campaign to really function.
The other side to that, a big part of that is working with the DM to make sure not only does your character lore fit in, but the family lore and the other NPC lore fits in as well. It can be hard at times for players, especially players coming from a noble backgrounds is a really tough one, because you're coming from a powerful background that has influence in the world. So working with your DM to figure out not only where your character fits, but where that family fits in, and leaving it open enough for him to find ways to work that family into the world, to work those ties in, and a lot of back and forth in that aspect. The big things I like to say when you build an NPC, and this is what I kept asking Braylin when she was making Alejandra, is like, why is your mother doing this? Not only why are you, adventuring, but why is your mother telling you go get out into the world? Like, what was the story? Because, my mother in real life was like, when I joined the army, she was like, this is awful, this is a mistake, don't do this. She was not like, yeah, go out and put yourself in danger every moment of every day. Adventuring's a lot, adventuring's a lot of danger. So why is your mother saying, or why is anyone in your backstory saying, hey, let's do this? She touched on the rival side of it. Why are they, and she brought up a really good point, why are they your rival and not someone else's rival? And that's a great, you think about it like from you want to think about it from the perspective of your character. Like, and what you think the event was in your character's mind may not be the way that the event perceives to that rival or that other NPC or that that loved one, that family member. So the big thing with that is leave a lot of room, not a lot, but leave enough room for your DM to take those and use them. You don't want to try to draft them so strictly that that they can't show up in the campaign because they never leave this one house, this one room in this one house. You want to try to leave it as a chance for that NPC to show up. Braylin, you built what was the child, the orphan you were escorting to Silverguard?
Oh, Ollie.
Yeah, you made Ollie. Um, and the big thing with Ollie is he came about from a purpose. He wasn't just something that showed up. I mean, Ollie had a reason to be there.
Yeah, and so with Ollie, specifically, he he was developed as a means for Alejandra to have a reason to not leave home per se, because she'd already done that. For me, he was the reason that Alejandra left what she thought she wanted to do, which was work at an orphanage. And she, for me, Ollie gave Alejandra a man. I made their names way too close together. Ollie gave Alejandra a very childlike aspect of an outlook, because Alejandra grew up in a trading post, right? Like, and she's a single, like her dad wasn't around. Her mom was a single mom raising her, not a whole lot of kid action in her small trading post, right? Like, so she really grew up to be like who her mother is and who her mother thought she was. And so Ollie gave Alejandra that childlike outlook. Same with all the orphans and the orphanage, right? It gave her that option to have some kind of childhood without actually experiencing it, which is like a very large portion of why I wanted her to work at an orphanage in the first place. The other reason is Ollie was a good way to get Alejandra to the party. It was a very easy way to get her to the party, and to explain why she clings to other people so easily, and why she takes care of her friends like a litter of newborn puppies. That's another good one. It really helps explain her naivety, I think, to some people, that she really is kind of just a child. She worked around children forever in a very secluded kind of orphanage in a small town by her trading post. Like, it just, like, it wasn't just Ollie. Ollie was a large part of it, but it also helped build a scenario for Alejandra to have like small character growth before the story even started.
It's a great way to say that. Ollie had was one NPC that served a lot of purposes. I mean, some NPCs are just there out of necessity for that, like a mother and a father. You know, everybody has to come from somewhere, usually. Unless you're a 1,000-year-old warforged just waking up. 10,000-year-old warforged. So, yeah. You would have, like, you have some of these that come out of necessity as far as, like, just your basic needs. You know, you need parents.
Did you just give us a spoiler that Jaeger doesn't have parents? Because that's a very sad backstory now.
No warforged has parents. Warforged are created, not born.
Sad.
But, so, like, some people don't have, you know, outside of that very small margin of players, NPCs can have that basic necessity. Some are the catalyst for the adventure, which kind of was Ollie, as well as Alejandra's mother. Some of them can be things that, you know, cause character flaws, or character, like if a mother doted on her son too much and he thought he was God's gift, he comes out to be an adventurer that's brash and thinks he knows everything.
Sorry, a smoker's cough, my bad.
But you have you could have and that all ties into building that character backstory. You build that backstory, then you build a character that fits into that backstory.
Yeah. And I think going along with that, something else very important that I think kind of gets overlooked is like meaningless NPCs that you put into your backstory as a character. And what I mean by that is like the example of how Alejandra blew out of a snail shell. The wizard, she doesn't know his name. He was just a wizard, but he played a very, very important role, because now Alejandra is part of the party an entire continent away where she doesn't know where she is. And on top of that, it gives Alejandra a reason to continue journeying and find somebody, because now she needs to figure out what happened to Ollie, what possibly could have happened. And so as meaningless as he is, because he doesn't have a name, it is also very meaningful because it's giving a purpose that wasn't there before.
Yeah, that looking at him like an NPC, looking at that wizard like an NPC, is one way to look at it. But to me, I don't necessarily consider that wizard an NPC. That's more like a prop, a backstory prop. Because he showed up, didn't really have like much dialogue outside of "now you must die" kind of thing, and then he was killed. So to me, that's like a story prop, like something that you use to push the story along. But to me, an NPC has a personality. It has a name. It has like a, well, not necessarily a name, but it has like a reason to last. Unless you have those nobody NPCs, which is what we'll touch on next. But she's right. Like, so Ollie has a massive center in her backstory, as does her mother. But this wizard, he's just a throwaway. We have Jake McLeod, who is the perfect example of what we talked about earlier, who we thought was a throwaway NPC that it will now live on forever. And another thing that one of our chat touched on is you can roll up NPCs to fit into whatever your backstory or whatever. There is a section in the Dungeon Master's Guide, chapter 9, that has tables for everything from appearance to personality to all that stuff. And if you're struggling, that's a great place to start. But I think when you're building a character and you're doing this, it's better to stay away from that side of it and really build, like Aliandra did, build Ollie, build her mother. Any tips for building those characters? I know you struggled a little bit, so any advice you can pass on to the next person?
This is gonna sound so silly, but the biggest tip that I could give somebody is give your character a name. The first thing, in my opinion, is give them a name. Because it's the same as like when your parents used to say, like, oh, don't name that mouse, don't name that spider, because then you're going to want to keep it and you're going to love it. It gives you a reason to be motivated to work on them. As soon as you, because like as soon as you say that, as soon as you say, oh, I'm building my mother, that doesn't have as much impact as I'm building my mother and her name is Cassandra Thornsberry or something, right? Like those are, it gives you a reason and it gives you the drive. Apparently my dog has some comments to make on this as well, but it gives you the reason and the drive to keep going and to give you that motivation.
It's a great tip.
To do it. That is like genuinely, that's the first thing I always do is like, okay, so my character is an elf. I've already built my character. So let's look at elf names that could possibly be for her mother. Right? Like that's one of the first steps I make.
That is a great step. When you get into now we're gonna move more into the DM side. And you have that nobody NPC. That's the first type of NPC that I shouldn't say the first time you're gonna come across. That's the easiest one, so we're gonna start there. To me, I have ideas for like as a DM when they're in Pudmit, I have an idea what the population looks like, which is your first step. You want to pull someone from the populace for a nobody NPC. You don't be descriptive. You don't want to push it over the edge. You don't want to give him any reason for the party to want to come back to him. You can I like to use them typically as like information gatherers. Like I said before, as the party in Pudmit turns and says, can we just ask some random guy if they've seen Atriel? I'm like, yeah, you can grab somebody, and he says, he went to the mine earlier, and then he toddles off. Try not to be descriptive for the nobody NPCs. They are literally just a walking prop to me. They're no different than like a broom or a shelf. They show up, do their job, you forget they exist. That's pretty much all you have to worry about with those ones. And don't be afraid to use nobody NPCs. is I think the biggest thing on that. Don't be afraid to just let them grab someone off the street that serves no importance other than to convey this 7-8 word message and then disappear into the crowd, never to be seen again. I know they're not as exciting as good, like, you know, you have those good NPCs, but they serve a purpose, and don't be afraid to use them to that purpose. The next, and this is where you first get into really building one, you have your story NPCs. These are your Atriels, your Miriams, Tamara, Tommen. They don't have any real utility to the party. They're not going to teach the party a whole lot. They might pass on tidbits. They're not going to jump in and sell the party anything. They're not going to jump in and help in combat. They're there to progress the story along and give the characters reason to get invested.
Combat, though, Josh. He just loved it so much. He was so in on every fight.
But yeah, so this is where you really start building them. And my first step with that NPC is, as Braylon said, is I start out with a name and a location. And you want to start with, I mean, you can even start more with well, I guess you say it this way. Start with their role. What are they doing there? What is the point of this NPC in your campaign? Are they there to inhibit the party in some way? You know, make it tough for them to speak to the noble? Are they there to is Miriam and Atriel? I took the dichotomy of trying to better the town and kind of took the, like, I want to better the town by mining and, you know, just pushing as hard as we can forward. And I had Atriel that was kind of the, like, I want to keep everyone safe. Let's do enough. We have enough. Let's not do too much and get hurt, kind of thing. And that was their role. That was to make that conflict and get the party invested, which it seemed like it did. What do you think, Alejandra? How was that from your side, that role there? I guess I'm cutting out a little bit there. So you start with that role, then you want to kind of go off the location. I had Miriam and Atriel and Pudmit. So taking the role of, I want that rough, that push as hard as we can, and that, like, hang back, kind of more money smart, high class guy. That gave me the personality and appearance of both of them. I wanted to make Miriam real down to earth. In that, to kind of tie her into being on that side of, like, let's work real hard, you know, like a hard worker. I thought of it like an old factory worker. So I took the personality kind of like that, like I want to get the job done. I don't mess around. I'm not a dick, but I'm not, like, pandering. With Atriel, I took the other side. I wanted him to be real haughty and come off like he was better than you, and have that real brainy. So I kind of went with that typical Karen aspect, like, oh, don't get me dirty. I don't want to deal with that. And then I named them after that. Once I had a description and an idea, I named them. Then I started tying them to the rest of the town. Then you get into, like, the real meat and potatoes, like, what's their motivation for being here? You know, why are they here? Why aren't they the nobodies? What information do they have to give to the party? And you'll kind of accumulate this. You don't write all this down at once. You'll accumulate, like, oh, they would know this. Oh, they would know this. And the big thing is, like, how long do you plan to keep them in the campaign? Is this like an eternal NPC? Is this a couple sessions? Is this like one session? And all that stuff. Once you get all that stuff, you have your basic NPC. That's when you really can start looking at it as a whole and tweaking things. What did you think about the play between Atriel and Miriam?
I still think Miriam's evil. I think you're hiding something. I think she secretly wants to kill everybody, but that's okay. That's the player's job to be suspicious of everybody. And I really liked it, honestly. I thought it was a very creative way to have such a contrast between two NPCs. And I think it gave the players a lot of questions, more than the NPCs themselves had answers for. Like, why is Kia's overly so attracted to Atriel?
I didn't plan on that. Nobody could plan on that.
No, I don't think there's any planning with Kia's. Like, did you exactly? Yeah, I don't think there's any planning for Kia's. Or like, if there, like, it gave room for connection. When Atriel went missing, Oleandra and Kia's had some time together to try and find him. It gave the party room for connection, and that's kind of nice with the contrast. Or there was bonding over the suspicions of Miriam and what could be going on in the mine, and like, it gave the party reason to bond. I think that's something that's very important about NPCs, and even throwaway NPCs. Those are very important for that reason as well, right? It gives them a reason to bond and work together.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was... I kind of tried to use it... I used it to push the party together and get them to bond, but I also wanted to use it to kind of tug at those strings of the party. By giving them the two different outlooks, it gave the party a chance to figure the characters out, especially early. Because, as you remember, we had... Kies wanted to follow, was just like, let's just do what Atriel wants. You had Costo, who at first wanted to follow Miriam and then didn't really care. It gave it a chance to really tug the party in different directions and see how everybody fit in. And it really, Jake in the chat brings up a good point. It gives everybody a chance to respond to that NPC differently. Oleandra, what was Oleandra's thoughts of Atriel?
Leandra's thoughts of Atriel was, like, looking at him and knowing he is also Elven, she was like, oh, maybe he'll be like me. But then he was so much, like, more prim and proper than her that she was like, maybe you're not like me. And she didn't really know how to handle that too well. She kind of thought that he was too weak, but, like, the kind of weak that needed to be defended, which might be why Keys was friends with him. That's okay. At least from her point of view, because she thinks that everybody needs to be defended in some way, right? Like, she cares about the whole world. Yeah, for Oleandra, I think that she just didn't really get a chance with Atriel to even, like, get close with him because she didn't want to. She was like, this is Kiez's friend. If Kiez needs a teddy bear, he can have the teddy bear to himself. Okay.
What was Oleandra's thoughts on Miriam?
Miriam's bad. Miriam's bad news. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And, like, even separating, like, my suspicions versus Oleandra, Miriam is bad to Oleandra because she literally just is like, oh, that sucks that my people died. Let's throw more people down there and not care anymore. Which is, like, I get it. She needs to make money. Like, Braylon understands. Oleandra does not understand. She's just like, you just lost so many people and all these people are hurt. You're just going to keep throwing them out there? Why don't you care about people? That's rude.
Okay. Getting that perspective is always nice.
Actually, one NPC that you haven't brought up yet that I think was borderline the most important NPC to me and Oleandra was the most important NPC, was probably the least necessary, I would say, and that would be the Forge Master. And we never even learned his name.
We did. It was Fulgrim.
Was it Fulgrim?
Yes,
okay. Well,
I believe so.
Fulgrim. Fulgrim is. There were so many different bonding moments and things that came from that. Jaeger came out of his shell a little bit on Alejandro got to talk. Are you done with the attitude? Thank you. Alejandro got to talk to Jaeger for a little bit about it. And Costo and Leonard got some bonding time too. Like, it really just he gave players, even though he was so much smaller than Miriam and Atriel, he gave players like a really, really good come together moment. And on top of that, we also had Hijor, who was just a hoot to be around. Yeah. Alejandro was never around him, but if somebody could piggyback Tullen around for the rest of the campaign, I would vote Hijor.
I could see Hijor carrying Tullen around.
My little magic man.
Yeah, Fulgrim was... And when I developed Fulgrim, I really wanted to give... he was a way to pass on something to the party. Very specifically, Costo and Leonard, but it really wanted to give the party as an entirety a chance to get together and work on this. So giving him that moment and allowing him to have other people help was something that kind of came up on the fly, as far as like his personality evolved very quickly once I started playing him. But I had I kind of came up with him as like he came out of necessity. He was the Ollie in that idea, in that aspect of like, I need to get this information to the party. And Costo needs this shield. He wants to build this. So he was like, I have this need. I need to fill this. I have to find someone that's going to help Costo build a shield, and Leonard learn to Redsmith. We're going to get this together. We're going to put this, I got to fill this need. So I need a blacksmith. We're in a city full of dwarves and dwarven blacksmiths. I'll use a dwarven blacksmith, give him a dwarven name, make him gruff because he works a lot. And, the appearance and all that stuff comes, and he filled his purpose, and then that's kind of where you leave him. Sometimes it's just what you do with an NPC. Give him all the information that you have, and then just set him down, and they're there to use again.
And, like, that's the thing is, like, with those NPCs, as a DM, things happen that you can't ever plan for. Like, I'm pretty confident. Yeah, I'm pretty confident as a DM, at least Josh-wise, he didn't exactly force Jaeger to roll poorly on those handle-making things. And it happened. But because he got frustrated, Alejandra got to go outside and go into his head with a spell to try and help him figure out, because he had said that he had had a bad dream and stuff. So she had gone and had that chance and got to see what Jaeger's memories looked like, which is something that gives a bit of background to the party, which is very important.
Yes, that is a hugely important part of using those NPCs. Mm-hmm. Coming around to the next, I guess, type of NPC.
Let my dog out. I will be right back. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. The next kind of NPC that we come into is your utility. Your first type of utility NPC, which is your vendor. This is where the party's going to get something, and it doesn't always have to be a merchant. It could be someone that's trading favors. So, they have something you want, and you're going to pay them somehow for this. And I use them differently from story. I separate them from story NPCs because there's more to what you need to do for them. So you have your basic name, location, or your location, role, personality, appearance. You have all that same stuff. But on top of that, you need to figure out what are they, not only what they're selling. If you have a blacksmith, you want to have a list of items that they have. Not only your basic items, but your uncommon items, whatever you're allowing the party to get to. And do not be ashamed to gate your players. You shouldn't have your level 1 blacksmith touting the entire, an entire set of +3 plate armor just because they, managed to save up enough money. one of the things I do like to do with them is what can you do to haggle? And it's some vendors will just back and forth haggle. Some vendors will ask you for a favor and have that idea in your mind, so if someone tries to haggle, you don't have to like scurry for it. And we haven't run into any vendors yet in boss rolls, but one of the things I do like to do is jot down something that they want that you can get. It's not money, that's not, or is this person vain and responds well to flattery? Is this person someone who's willing to trade skilled labor for the item, or even unskilled labor for the item? They may need something moved or trees cut down or whatever it is that they need in order for you to get a better price. Figure out what that price is before you go in. And this is something you can use with like DC rolls. So you have them work on a shield for them and I like to set 2 or 3 DCs, usually one of them being in nat 20. So like 10, 15, 20. If you roll below a 10, no discount. Between 10 and 14, you get 3 gold off. 15 to 19, you get 5 gold off. Nat 20, you get 10 gold off. It's a nice thing to have in your head before you go into that, to give you a chance so that you're not scrambling at the last minute. The other thing is this someone that you think they're going to come back to? So how much personality do you have to put in? And this just general vendor number 1. You can just do the items and that kind of stuff. But if you're building Fulgrim, you're building a Dwarven Smith that you're going to have to go on this quest for and come back to have him repair this magic shield that no one else can do. You're going to want to have a lot more into him than just an item list and what he can do to haggle.
I just thought about the fact we're going to have to go back to Pudmit when Costa breaks his shield.
Maybe. Leonard does have the red smithing book, so he can probably work on it if the shield breaks. That's the thing. I mean, you came out of that shell, or so they think.
That is true. That is true. I was birthed by a snail.
So what kind of NPC vendors do you like, Alejandra?
Magic items? Magic item vendors?
Personality-wise.
Personality-wise? Alejandra hasn't really experienced vendors yet, so she probably wouldn't know. Braylon, I like vendors that don't take shit. And when I say that, I mean like a DM isn't going to let a player bully them into buying a 100 gold piece item for practically nothing. And it's a realistic personality, you know what I mean? Like, hey, I saw you try and sleight of hand that dagger off my shelf. Get the hell out of my store. You can't buy anything now, or I'm doubling the price. Like,
those are good NPCs. Those are good traits to have as a vendor. Personality-wise, I tend to do. I don't know if I should break that down for you guys or not, but yeah, I like to do a nice balance of. I usually like to give my players a way to get some kind of discount, but not like a free discount. Not like we walk in, we talk to them, we pass a charisma check, half off. I like to do something that's going to give the players a chance to contribute to the local economy and take money off of an item. So again, and not vast amounts. We're talking, if it costs 100 gold, the most you're getting off is 5. If it costs 1,000 gold, the most you're going to get off is like 100. So it's like, but that's a good, Jake has a couple really good ideas for vendors in the chat there. But in reality, if you go to a small town and you need something done, a lot of people are willing to trade some type of work for currency, which is Instead of paying you to do the job, they'll just take money off of your bill. So that's one of the traits I bring into that kind of idea.
I think a vendor that gets overlooked, and I consider it a vendor, is NPCs that are asking for something in return for information.
Yeah, that to me is a vendor.
Yeah, and the reason that I say that that's a vendor is because of the fact that, is the story going to progress if they don't pay that? You know what I mean? If they don't do that, if they don't take that toll. Obviously, I'm not talking about the rogue on the back end of the street that is like, oh yeah, I can tell you where I bought these if you go kill this guy for me. Like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the wizard who, like, Oleandra goes in and it's just like, hey, I'd really like to learn the sending spell. And the wizard is just like, okay, awesome. But first you need to go get me this much paper for my new spell book that I'm writing. Like that kind of vendor where you're trading knowledge, but you're still using it for, like, you're trading knowledge for either physical gain. Sometimes it can be monetary. If you want to learn that spell, pay me for it. But like items, like materials, are not always the things that vendors offer.
Yeah, for me, a vendor isn't just buy that item for this much money or buy that item for this labor. Any kind of transaction that goes on apart from let's just be friends and hang out, or like, I need you, we need help, please help us do this. Yeah, like if the party is looking for imagine, like the staff of the archdruid, and the wizard, the archmage is like, hey, I'll tell you where that is. You go, hey, I need to know where this is. Yeah, I'll tell you where that is, but first I need you to bring me this, and this, because I need to do this spell. I want to do this spell, and basically that's a transaction to me. You're doing this and getting these so that you can get that information in return. That's a vendor NPC.
Yeah.
And like, the vendor NPCs can be story NPCs. I mean, these can overlap a lot. I just like to look at them differently when I'm making them, because it kind of helps me start to separate them.
And having that separation really helps you with a plan as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, going back to rival and family NPCs and everything, having a plan and having it set out and like having it separated step by step is very, very, it's so much easier than just trying to take a clump of a web, right? It's like untangling Christmas lights. You gotta keep everything in line.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And these NPCs, another thing I should have touched on earlier, these NPCs can move through categories. So just because you started out as a story NPC doesn't mean that he can later become a vendor NPC. Maybe you decide you want to use this as the catalyst to give them information. But they have to work for it. So you take that story NPC and shift it to a vendor NPC. Or that guy that you just did that quest for to find out where the staff of the Archdruid is now becomes a combat NPC. He started out as a vendor, moved into the combat category, because now he's going to help you because it's in the horde, it's in a dragon's horde and he wants part of it. So these NPCs will slide. This isn't just like a stat. You don't build it and just lock it into that category.
Yeah, and like I think the most common one with that is the fact that, like, me and Josh were talking about this before the stream. Every campaign has that one NPC that's supposed to be a piece of paper that's been ripped up, where it's just like, oh yeah, I'm looking at the town square. What does that little girl that's playing ball look like in the middle? And then the DM is just like, oh, she is a dragonborn, or an acid black dragonborn that looks like she's wearing dirty clothes because she's an orphan. And then the party goes, oh, that's our baby now. And it's gone from something that you didn't even have as a plan to being completely adopted and is now a story NPC. Yes. Because players are jerks.
You will find yourself mentioning an NPC, jotting down a few notes, and then between sessions, flushing out that whole NPC because the 4 lines of text they were supposed to feed the party turned into an hour of conversation, and now they're coming along. And don't be surprised when that happens to you every single campaign. Moving into the next type of NPC, though. Yeah, Jake McLeod. It is exactly who Jake McLeod is in our campaign. Except
Jake
he's
McLeod
not
was
even
not-
an NPC yet.
He was not an NPC. He was he was Leonard, and then but now he's an NPC because
Then
in
he
order
was
to use disguise
Kies.
self, you would have had to see it before. So
Then he was Kies because Kies saw Leonard. But yeah.
right, yeah.
Moving into the next type of NPC, though, is the other type of utility NPC, which is your combat NPC. And this is helping the party in combat. This is how I look at this one. Again, you want to start out with the roles. This one, you have the role of like, are they protecting the town? Are they sent specifically to save the party? Did you just happen upon this guy fighting a group of bandits and now you're on his side? This one, I put a lot more emphasis on motivation. What makes them fight? Because that'll dictate a lot more of what's of this character than the other types of NPCs. You have your location, which should be pretty easy to come up with. The personality comes from that motivation. Did this guy get jumped on the side of the road? If you're talking like a human male that gets jumped on the side of the road, that's a commoner. They're in combat, they have some abilities, but like, are they gonna flee? What's their motivation to fight? I don't want to die. Are they? They're probably not as tough as your adventurers, unless they're
A regular
Alejandra.
guy.
Yeah. The appearance that'll come, the ties. The big thing for them is like I said, why are they helping? As a DM, are they meant to survive this fight? Like, do you plan on having the NPC survive? Or is this like a drive, a motivation to get the party to do something else?
That hurts, and it hasn't even happened yet. That hurts. That hurts for the future. Future Braylon is going to look back on this and be like, Josh warned us.
This happens a lot to get the party into something or to drive home the point of like when a party is, especially early levels, when the party is trying to find a reason to fight and try to find a reason to band together. If they meet and you're watching this boy get, or this man or woman or family or whatever the NPC group is, get attacked by bandits, are they gonna survive this? Are they or are these people going to die to be the catalyst to the adventuring party? Like, what is their purpose? And sometimes that means NPCs don't survive that. And then when go ahead.
There's combat NPCs like the Town's Guard, where the party just gets overly pissed at them for being tired and dying on site.
Yes.
I just thought about me saying that I was sad that NPCs are gonna die in a fight, and then I was like, wait, I just ragged on Town's Guard on Sunday for that.
Yes, Alejandra did.
Yeah.
The other big thing is, are these gonna be generic fighter, generic human with sword? Or are these, when you get into the higher levels, do these have classes and abilities? Is this a mage that's going to wield spells? What is their character sheet look like, basically? And you may be building character sheets for these guys. Is this a paladin that's going to be wielding things like Divine Smite or Lay on Hands to help his allies, help your party, which would be allies? Is this... are they going to have like a weird off the wall spell? Are they a combination of classes? What class or abilities does this character have? And don't limit yourself to locking it into one class. If you have an idea for a scout that kind of is like a rogue and kind of is like a ranger, use that. Use your imagination to design that NPC. Give them a chance to do what you need them to do. Braylon did bring up, we just killed 3 Townsguard on Sunday. Well, yeah, 3 Townsguard did die on Sunday.
Yeah, they died. We did not. I would like to plead the fifth. We did not murder them. We just did not help them live.
Right.
There was a stark difference.
Yeah, the other thing is, what is their scale to the party and to their surroundings, to the other monsters? You may introduce an NPC that is, the party's on the verge of, the party stumbles into something they shouldn't have, and this paladin that's 5 or 10 levels ahead of the party shows up and just divine smites his way through as the party struggles to kill one thing as a whole. Are they showing up to help, and do they end up being, needing saved from the party? These are all things that you're going to come across with these combat NPCs. It's different stuff than your story NPCs, because you have to start thinking about stats and things like that. This is where you get into NPCs rolling checks. Go ahead, Braylon. Sorry.
It's all good. It's hard because Discord lags, right?
Yes.
I think something that should be touched on, because every party's going to have a magic user of some sort, is the NPCs, the combat NPCs that you do not plan to have. And I'm not talking about the druid finds a dog in the forest that's actually a dire wolf. I am talking about the sorcerer who casts animate object on the coat rack, and now you have to figure out stats and attack abilities for a coat rack. Right?
That can be very difficult.
That's an NPC. Or the druid that summons animals, and they choose to summon a spider. And now you've got to pull up all this whole new stat sheet and everything. Like, you really it's because the players keep you on your toes. Right?
Do.
Like, I'm pretty confident to say that there's probably not a stat block for an animated stump. Let's go with a stump. They decide to animate a stump. I'm sure that that's something, like, how is that going to attack? What are you going to do? Are you going to allow that to happen? Because can it attack? How are you going to play that as the DM? Right? Like, that's something that, from a player standpoint, players love to see if they can keep their DM on their toes by saying, hey, I have animate objects. Let's see what that necklace around his neck can do to his throat. Right? Like, oh, that's such a good idea. Anyways, but that, those are things that you have to keep up with. Like, are you going to let Alejandra strangle this man with his own necklace? Because I'm going to save that. I'm writing that down. Strangle this man with his own necklace because it's animate object. Right? Is it strong enough to do so? Those are things that you actually have to plan for.
That is definitely something that you need to plan for.
And those are combat NPCs that, unfortunately, you're going to eventually have to deal with if you have a magic user.
And then she pushed right into the next category, which is your animal or monster NPCs. These are your pets. These are your intelligent creatures. Some DMs even consider these all creatures that your party comes into contact with, because creatures will act a certain way based on their intelligence level, based on that creature, based on the location and how many of them there are. So, and this is something that as a DM you have a lot of leeway with. Do you want to let that stray dog show up and live with the party, or is he just going to run because he's afraid? Is that spider that you guys came across, that giant spider, is it going to attack the party when it's wounded, or turn and try to, web you down and turn and try to flee? These are all things as a monster NPC you need to think about, as well as, like she said, when they animate that coat rack, what does an animated coat rack do? How does it move? What about the chair, the necklace? How is this going to work? Coming up with stats on the fly for that kind of stuff. That's all stuff when you come to your animal monster NPCs you're going to have to check out. And for that, I recommend just going with what your gut tells you. An animated necklace that depends on the necklace. Is it a lady's fine necklace with a pendant that can't really, you can't put pressure on her, it breaks? Is it a heavy dwarven collar made of heavy iron that could really damage someone, that's stuff that you would have to think about as a DM and roll with those NPCs.
That's genuinely such a good idea. I hope I get animate objects soon. That's such a good idea that I came up with.
It's a rough one.
Yeah, it's a rough one.
Coming into the last and final and possibly probably the most used and thought of NPC is the villain. It's the big bad. It's the guy that shows, you know, the head of the bandits, the dragon, the demigod that's trying to wipe out all of it, you know, all of existence.
Yes.
And and with this one, I mean, the role is pretty clear, but you still want to divine those villains. Are they a rival villain? It doesn't really, they're not out to really conquer anything, just hinder the party or hinder that one specific person. Are they the ender of the world? Are they trying to get in there and really wipe out the planet? And this is the one we're actually going to build today after we have this discussion. This one, you want to put a ton of emphasis on motivation. Why are they trying to mess with the party? And you can take these, you know, rival NPCs from the backstory and they can become minor villains. You could completely make one from scratch out of it, you know, an amalgamation of classes. So you want to, where do they show up? Where are they from? That all comes into your motivation. Their personality. Are they your typical, I carry a sword, I'll kill everyone villain? Get out of my way, I'm stronger than you. Or are they quiet and sophisticated? And they hide behind their scouts and spies and just tinker with the party as they move along and try to hinder them in little ways before outright confronting them.
Okay, now I'm more suspicious of Atriel than I was of Miriam.
Right? What is their tie to the world? If they're that uncanny quiet guy, are they a noble with an unseen network of people trying to overthrow the kingdom and you just happen to stumble into their plot and get in their way? Or are their ties based on military conquest and they've subdued the orc tribes and they will listen because they are fearful of angering this man? These are all things that really play a big point in your villains. Going off that, then you want to get into your classes or abilities, however you want to say that. Do you want to build a paladin character sheet at level 15 or 20 to be the bad guy that your party confronts? I find that to be a little boring and drab, to be honest. I like to take different abilities from different classes. There's a wonderful world out there that you can find resources for abilities. You can make up abilities on the fly, or I tend to write them all down because I don't like to do that. I can overpower things too easy that way. But then you get into even more detail with them. Are they solo? Are you trying to conquer the world on your own with your sword and you're angry and it's just you and you're subduing and killing everything in your path? Or do you have hundreds of spies everywhere? People in your party, people you know, your parents. They all answer to me and I pay them good coin to find out exactly what you're doing. Do they show up again and again and again? Or are they going to confront you one time and kill you or die? What is in that aspect? Do they flee when wounded or do they fight harder? Do they evolve into a different form? Do they have multiple stat blocks? Do you fight 3 or 4 iterations of this guy? This is all stuff like that. And Braylon, what do you think makes a good villain?
I think what makes a good villain is what they mean to the party. Because, like, parties can have bounty contracts, right? Oh, go kill this dragon for this much money. Why are they trying to get that money? Did one of their friends die and now they need 1,000 gold for a wizard to cast cast a spell on them to bring them back to life?
True resurrection.
True resurrection, sure. Not revivify because that's only 60 seconds, but like what does it mean to the party? Like Josh said, are they gonna pop up once and then not exist anymore or not have existed beforehand? Like, do they just know this person's name and what they're trying to do? Like, what is it to the party that makes them want to go defeat the guy? On the flip side of that, I think that another thing that makes a great villain is if they can blend in and not mean anything to the party at all, kind of thing. So like Kia's being best friends with Atriel only to find out that Atriel kidnapped his mother or something. I don't know. Like what, like something on the flip side that makes it a big deal. I think that is also very cool. Another really cool idea is the idea that a big bad evil guy doesn't exist at all. And it's not that it doesn't exist, but like it's the idea that is the big evil thing. Like instead of having one big villain, it's an army that you need to try and convince to not take over the world without really a solid leader. You have to fight lots of like 10 different people. So like your big bad evil guy could be like a town that is like the Hunger Games, where you're not really killing a president, you're changing the minds of people, right? Like
Very
you can
true.
you can come up with so many cool ideas without it actually being like one solid villain if you want to do role play instead of combat. And on the flip side, if you want to do combat instead of role play, you can also just straight up make a god.
That is true.
And
I've made plenty of those.
if you are making a hard thing to kill, remember to gear your party up to be able to kill a god.
Yes.
And do it slowly so that way they don't figure it out that you are gearing them up to kill a god.
A great way to use a villain is almost like a check for the party. So as your party starts out and they fight this villain for the first time, there's always a chance the villain could go down, but you can use him as like to show up, fight, leave. Show up, fight, leave. You can do this over and over and over again, every couple levels, every level if you like, which that can get kind of bland. But intermix it into the story, slide it through the story that when the party's doing something, that villain isn't going to sit around and do nothing. He's going to be out there conquering new archetypes or making new networks of spies. He's going to be keeping tabs, and you may catch somebody who is spying on you in the inn to report back to the shadowy figure that's been hindering you. The party may not know the enemy's name. He may be, works his way into the party as an NPC, and suddenly one night one of the party members goes missing, kidnapped. These are all nice ways to use these NPCs and really use that villainous aspect, I guess you could say. Now you don't overdo these tropes. Don't have 3 different villains show up and fight you at 3 different times. But don't be afraid to. The other thing is, don't be afraid to make the villain relatable. I think that in my eyes is what makes a villain great. When you really have to think like, wow, I can see why he's doing that. Like, because if you look at the adventuring party, in somebody's eyes, they're the villain. Costa mentioned he wiped out a band of bandits. They have kids. Well, they may have kids. They have parents. Costa may be the villain in their eyes. So make it like, is that Oath of Vengeance or Oathbreaker Paladin? Is he trying to amass power to cure the woman he loves of a horrible condition that's killing her slowly?
Oh, absolutely. That's why Costa's doing it.
But that could be your villain right there. A man is conquering new lands to find a way to cure the woman he loves of a horrible disease. A man had made a pact with a demon that turned him, blind to the comforts of man in order to save his wife. Like how. That's a great, everybody cares about someone. That's a great thing to do. is he amassing power for power's sake? Does he just want to be he was downtrodden his whole life and finally snapped and took over, found power and learned he liked it. Is the party in his way, or does he just like messing with them? Or she? Does she just like, throwing obstacles in the party because it amuses her? She really doesn't have any ill will. They're not doing anything super wrong, but it's just hilarious to watch the party stumble over and over on all these things that they're throwing.
That just sounds like the DM.
Yeah.
That just sounds like the DM.
But is she paying? Is your villain paying the mercenaries to fight the party between towns? Mercenaries fleeing when they get too hurt, but it just takes time and resources away from the party, and they think that's just hilarious. Is the villain a villain to the world or just to the party? These are all things you can really sit around and consider. If two guys, if a man is in love with a woman and they fall in love with a party, that man may turn out to be a temporary villain. He gets stronger to fight the party, and then all of a sudden, when he shows up, no one else in the world has heard of him, but he's been looking for you. And these are all little things you can do to make that villain relatable and comfortable and really fit into the world.
I think something that kind of hinders DMs on occasion, you're allowed to change your mind. Especially when it comes to NPCs. You are allowed to change your mind. And what I mean by that is you can go into a campaign and plan that the big bad evil guy's a dragon, that his horde is the entire world, and anybody who tries to stop him is getting between him and his horde, and you know how bad of an idea that is with a dragon. But maybe your party is in a town and they're interacting with a merchant and they steal a magic item from the merchant, a very powerful magic item, because it happens. There's thieves among parties. It happens. And now this merchant has decided to pledge his entire life to getting that magic item back and killing that party that took it from him in the first place. Maybe there was an attachment to it that it belonged to. Maybe it was something super pointless, like a ring of invisibility. And it may be kind of useless or useful, but the real attachment to it was his wife's. So now he is amassing. He sold his store. He goes and steals wares from other merchants to sell them for more gold. And your plan is completely changed, because parties are kind of jerks like that. We can derail an entire campaign very quickly.
With one hole.
One hole will derail an entire fight. Yes. One hole will derail an entire fight. One child NPC could derail an entire fight. One dog, really anything. So you're allowed to have changes on the fly. If anything, it's your job. And never, ever let a player tell you otherwise, because that's not fair and that's a red flag.
Very much
go
agreed
away
with
from
that.
my table.
That is very much agreed. Now we're going to jump into the fun part. Hopefully we still have some people in chat ready to help us out here. But we're going to try to build an NPC or a villain here. And I'm going to put this up online after we're done, so that everyone gets a good chance to take a look at it, and you can use it in your campaign if you want. So, Braylon, what is a good not monstrous, but a good race for a martial, a physical, like not necessarily physical, but a combat villain?
Wanty.
I haven't used them in a long time.
Snake person who's immune to the venom.
I haven't used them in a long time. So, Wanty.
And the reason I say Wanty, just to give a brief explanation, is they're very cold people. They are very much so prim and proper in their own way, but they are also supposed to be played as an I don't care about anything. My world is my world. If I want these riches, I will take them. They are a very cold, solid plan group, and that's the way that they're supposed to be played.
Okay. So you have a Wanty. We're gonna make this the fighting.
Wanty Monk.
Monk. Okay. Let's start with, what is their reason for being a villain? What did they do to become a villain? Or not, what did they do? Why are they doing these villainous things?
I think with Wanty, it's very easy for that because, like I said, they are played very cold. They want to, and therefore they shall. I know.
Why is this particular one a villain?
I think that ours is going to be a villain for the specific reason that they were like the runt of their tribe, and now they're trying to amass their own power to prove that they aren't the runt.
Okay.
In a cold people.
Okay. That's a good reason. So they want to prove that they're powerful to the world, which is, I mean, that could be said for a lot of people. They have purchase here. Okay, so they're trying really hard to figure this out. Let's move into we're not going to put location in because this is kind of a floating one. What is their appearance? Male or female? We'll start with that.
Female, because I'm a girl. Let's go.
Okay. So female, short or tall?
Short. What she was undoubtedly appearance-wise the runt.
Okay. Short, runt. Okay. You want to go monk? Did you say?
I think so. I think a monk would be fun.
Okay. What about? Okay, so monk. What about? Let's get a name for this Unity snake charming person.
Kai.
What is it?
Kai. Kai.
Kai. Pronounced Kai. Okay. So we have Kai the monk. If they're going to be a villain, we're going to have to buff those monks, which we can do. So for a 5th level party of 5 adventurers, I'd say to make the monk around level 8 or 9. 8 or 9 level monk. So how are they amassing this power? Are they conquering lands? Are they...
I think as a monk, because they train in monasteries, I think they've started their own cult.
Ooh, cult leader. Great 9. Cult leader. So they're doing it via influence.
Mm-hmm.
So Kai the monk is she would have to be very spoken to convince others to join this. Tell me about her inner circle.
He would have her first in command, which would probably be much bigger than her.
So they're a bruiser.
Yeah, just trying to prove that even though she's small, she has power otherwise. So she would have a very large first in command.
So she's dominated this person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She would have probably a few people in her circle that are kind of just biding time, waiting for her to pass.
Okay.
Kind of thing. Or for her to be stopped. Mostly because they're afraid of her. And I think she would probably have a mole. Somebody who was the first reaction for somebody to why the party found out about her and her wrongdoings in the first place.
Okay. I'm gonna guess that this villain is gonna be recurring, because there's a lot of
Yes.
backstory.
Why am I am having a way easier time with this than I did with Alejandra.
That's because I'm asking all the questions.
That's fair.
Now tell me about Kai in combat.
She is very dexterous, like most monks, but she is almost like borderline rogue dexterous. You don't know where she's going to hit you from, but as soon as she does, you know you've been hit.
Moves around a lot. Not directly confrontational.
No, she is very much so like what she does not want to face you face on, because she knows that isn't her strong suit, and it's not because she's afraid of that. She just knows how to get herself to a win.
Okay. So she's powerful, but not like a stand toe to toe with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let's talk about Kai's personality. What do you think as far as as she's amassed this cult, is she pandering? Is she like does she read like a self-help book? Is she how does she gain these followers?
She is very influential.
Okay.
And I like how you kind of said self-help book, because I think that she would amass her followers by convincing them that they were weak and that she was once weak, but that she could teach them how not to be weak. Like do that whole like backhanded compliment thing where it's just like, hey, that shirt is like not for everybody, but you kind of wear it well, right? Like do like the whole backhanded compliment.
I used to be like you, and now look at me. Look at how great I am now.
But she would come off a lot friendlier as that until she's behind closed doors, and it would be a matter of, ha, they're so stupid. They're listening to me.
Right. So she's, what do they call that?
Manipulative?
Yeah. Doesn't believe her own teachings.
She would fully believe her own teachings, but she doesn't think that anybody is good enough to be as good as her from her teachings.
That's what I mean. She doesn't believe that she can make you as good as she is. Okay. So yeah, in a few minutes there, we have a Kai, the Yuntai monk. She's female, she's short, and she wants to prove that she didn't have power growing up. She wants to prove that she has it now. Amassing power via influence and recruiting for the cult that she leads. She very much reads like a self-help book when she talks to you. She's very, I can teach you to be just like me. Look at everything nice I have, and you could have just as much. Although she doesn't believe it, and her inner circle knows that. Standing beside her, she has her first in command. He's a Yuntai, stands at 8 feet tall, broad-chested, carries a large sword. People surrounded by people who are afraid of her. One person whose shifty eyes reveal that they may be looking for the door. When you enter combat, she dances around a lot. She won't come face to face with you, but she will hit you from the back and disappear. There's a villain. Took 10 minutes. You have a baseline villain. Then you can get into your... As I can't do a snake voice very well today. As I move, you can't hardly follow me, can you? I was once weak like you. Now I am strong. 10 minutes, you have a villain. Now, we're gonna build another one. This is my favorite villain, which is the shadowy villain. The one that hides. The one that you never really see until the very end, when he shows his hand. And before you stands the person that sat in your party and ate at your table. Let's open up.
Next session when Keys asks us, like he has every session, why are you so suspicious of me? I'm just friendly. I'm gonna be like, did you not watch the last thing with Josh?
I like to make these villains humans because they blend in anywhere. Since we made that one, we'll make this one a male. So we did a female. They're going to be tall, but they're going to be thin, gaunt. No combat prowess whatsoever. Definitely no. Couldn't wield a sword if they had to. Let's see. What kind of personality do you think this shadowy man is going to have?
I think they are going to be like a drink that has been poisoned.
Okay.
It's going to look absolutely phenomenal.
Okay.
Until you get too deep into it.
So appears helpful. But is manipulating the party. Plotting against them.
And like they don't even need to like manipulate. They could be like the reason maybe they got too close to a camp. Like they got too close to one of his friends' camps and he didn't want to be discovered and outed. So he put a rattlesnake in one of the tents and now they have to go to the nearest town to see a doctor.
Okay. So he's not directly confrontational. Yeah, that's a nice way to say it. It kind of moves things around just to play the party into positions. Let's name this human male. Let's see.
Atriel.
We can make Atriel a villain. So, yeah, we'll go right off of his personality. So Atriel is very methodical. Thinks very deeply. And he reaches out and talks to people that he can control, and he definitely sees himself as the smartest person in the room.
And he puts on a good front by being afraid of dirt. Nobody would think twice that he would be the one to stab you in the back because he wouldn't want to get his clothes dirty in the process.
This is a great idea to have there. Yes, I don't touch dirt. I don't get dirty. I don't like... Please wipe your feet as you come in. But my home is available to you anytime you want it. Let's, So this is where you can get really creative. How is he going to tinker with the party? And as someone who operates from the shadows, this can be major or minor. Do we want... I mean, he could bribe the vendors to keep healing potions and other very, very... not just powerful, but necessary items from the party. He could hire mercenaries to pose as bandits. He could hire bandits to attack the party on the streets. He could
cast disguise self and give the party false information about himself.
That's a very good one.
He is.
Although I don't see him being so non-confrontational, putting himself out there that where he might possibly be detected. He could have his underlings and spies spread false information about the party, so whenever they show up, people think that the party arrives to the next town, and the people are afraid because they feel like they're about to be conquered. This is definitely my favorite type of villain. where they move pieces around in the shadows. And you can stack this villain on that classic villain, or on that combat villain. Is he paying Kai to amass an army for him to control through the shadows? Is there now a rift between Kai and Atriel because Kai feels that she has amassed enough power to step out from under her master, and Atriel is about to send the party in her direction to show her that everyone answers to him. This is there's a lot you can do with these, and everything you do really ties What would you think about that, Braylon, if you found out Atriel was the big bad and was just sending people after you?
I think that, like, me personally, I'd be like, yeah, I did that thing with Josh. I kind of saw this coming.
Yeah,
but beforehand, I would probably have been like, that's rude, Atriel, that's rude. But like, now, like, I don't know. I also agree those are the fun ones because, like, it gives the party a reason to be suspicious, like we have been the whole time. How many insight rolls have we rolled on Kia's by now?
Ooh. I will say now, I don't like to make a character in the party a villain, because that really stops that group from being able to bond again. So that's great for one campaign with a bunch of people that don't know each other, will never see each other again. But if you spend 2 or 3 years in a campaign just to find out that the guys that's been playing beside you has been trying to kill you the whole time, that's not something a party usually recovers from.
Probably not.
But with that being said, don't be afraid to take a page from Critical Role's book and bring a character back from the dead to be the bad guy at the end. I hope I didn't spoil that for anyone, but I'm sure by now you've seen. But yeah, just this is where, when you get to your NPCs, this is where you as a DM really have a chance to steer and guide the party, to cause conflict within the party, or unify the party against a group to bond them back together, bond them tighter together. So, and as a player, as Braylon got to do, she got to build her family and connect that character into the world via those NPCs.
And you haven't even seen anything yet, guys.
Yes, everyone has really good NPCs, and they've kept them from each other, which is something I can't say. Most parties don't keep secrets as well as this one. Not parties. Most players don't keep secrets as well as these. Most of the parties I've played with have been you get everyone's backstory on the first day. But this is just one thing coming up. In the future, we will be building NPCs that you may or may not see in Talaria. We're going to build, like I said, I'm going to put these into a document and make them available for everyone. But we're going to be building some. We're going to build some towns. And this is just the first in our world building series. Next month, I think we're doing towns. I think we're going to go over how to build cities, towns, and stuff like that. And at the end, we'll build one. And we'll build a few NPCs to put in there. But any other advice you can think of that we didn't touch on for building NPCs? From either the player or DM standpoint.
When you are building an NPC, a useless NPC, remember that it has a point and you are building it for that reason, and that nothing you do is useless to your players.
That is very true.
That is... Even if the players are like, wow, I hate that NPC, he's terrible. Costo and Atriel, for example. He's doing something because he's giving a reason to Costo to be so hostile. Right?
Yes.
Like, everything you do is for a reason. Like, even when I just was randomly like, hey, we can't find Atriel, could I just ask somebody, Josh? It was for a reason. So don't second guess yourself. If you're really struggling with that, talk to your players and say, hey guys, like, I am struggling. Are you actually enjoying these NPCs? Is it something I need to work on? At the end of the day, D&D is a team effort, and being a DM, you're not being a character, you're being hundreds of characters, and it shouldn't let you stress yourself out.
No, don't get stressed over NPCs. And like I said at the beginning, if you're really struggling, page 89, all of chapter 4 in the Dungeon Master's Handbook is creating non-player characters. We have tables here from appearance to abilities, talents, interaction things. Everything you need is in that book if you're DMing. So don't be afraid to hop in and check it out. The other thing you can do is get into our Discord. If you're struggling, I'm always up to help. Build an NPC, build a couple NPCs. Like I said, I'll be putting these and a couple more that I have into a document and sending them off to, I think I'll make a new channel where I can put resources for everyone to grab a hold of. The other big thing is we didn't touch on naming, and I know naming can be really hard. That's one of the hardest things for me. So Google Fantasy Name Generator. I think that's actually the name of a website, Fantasy Name Generator. Go there and click until you find a name that inspires you to build that NPC. You'll click through, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have in your head this orcish warrior that is coming down to help the party because the creatures that the fiends that you're fighting wiped out his village as a child and forced him to move, and they've been on the run ever since.
And vice versa. Like, if you have an idea for a character in mind, let that kind of float, and you can't think of a name and you don't like any of the names you generate, let that kind of flow through. I came up with the name Kai because I was like, a Wanti is a snake, Cobra Kai, but we can't call it that, so we'll name it Kai. There we go. Like, let the idea flow. Like, think about the aspects of your character. Like Josh said, you're building an orcish warrior, and his tribe was destroyed, so now he wants revenge. Name him Revan.
That's a great one.
Boom. Boom.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be major thought processes. You can literally just think of anything.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I had a Warforged named Crunch at one point. One of my favorite characters. Hammer and Crunch. It was great. It's a great time.
Yes, I mean, and if you have an idea for an NPC, jot it down, because I have notes for NPCs from years ago that I pull up, and I've used a lot of the same NPCs over and over and over again through different campaigns. If it's different groups, I just use the same one. If not, I reskin them and kind of put them in where they're needed. But don't ever let trying to build this NPC get in the way of you having a good time. Just have fun with it. I mean, worst case scenario is you have to kill kill it off, kill the NPC off because the party doesn't like it, or it just disappears into the background. Actually, the worst case scenario is when you have nothing prepared for that NPC, and all of a sudden the party is madly in love with it, and it is now the staple of your game. That is the worst case scenario. As a DM.
They stop chasing the big bad evil guy to go avenge the orphan whose a bandit burned down their orphanage, and they spend 6 months trying to track this thing down.
Yes.
And now the DM has to try and get that back on track.
Yeah, that will happen to you. So, but anyway, guys, thank you for hanging out. Thank you, Braylon, for being here and helping me out today. It was a blast. We, like I said, we're going to be making some resources available online. We're going to link a bunch of it in the Discord. So make sure you stop in and check that out. And we will see you guys again. We will see you Sunday. We have to wrap up Combat Sunday, which should be great. But
and yep.
Yes.
Remember, you will make us all cry if you're not there on Sunday. I'm just saying. You don't want to see the tears. You don't want to see it. Ugly tears, not even good tears. Ugly crying.
I mean, yeah. Yes, there will be ugly crying. If the party dies or if you guys don't show up. So,
Yeah, that's a real possibility. I think a lot of us burned through too many spell slots the other day.
I mean,
I'm good. I'm actually doing okay, but I know for a fact some of them aren't.
So, all right, guys. Thank you guys for hanging out, and we will see you guys Sunday. Bye.
See you on Sunday.
Are your potassium levels low? Ever wish you could become a banana? Well, head on down to the Botched Rolls Discord to become one of our lovely insiders. There, we treat all our bananas with the utmost respect, gossip about Kia's sleeping habits, participate in weekly events, and even win exclusive prizes. Want advantage on your rolls? Then make sure you hit the subscribe button. So, what are you waiting for? It's time to get botched.